started like any other night. The kind of evening that passes unnoticed until you start tracing back to when everything began to unravel. Melissa had a big presentation coming up. She's a senior account manager for a mid-sized marketing firm near Austin. Slick team, big clients, lots of late nights. She asked if I could help her test her slides before tomorrow's big pitch. No problem. I liked feeling useful even in little ways. It gave me some small part in her world, which lately had been feeling more like a planet orbiting far outside mine. So we were there in our living room. The lights were low, the dogs curled up in their spots, a cold beer in my hand and decaf in hers. Comfortable silence, the kind you get used to when you've been married long enough to communicate entire sentences with a glance. I just need to run through the animations real quick, she said, pulling a USB stick from her purse and walking over to the projector. Make sure everything's clean. She plugged it in and booted up the file. And then the room changed. I don't mean it shifted physically. Nothing moved. No noise, no dramatic music cue. But something heavy slid into place. A shift in pressure, like when a storm front rolls in before the rain. The projector lit up. The wall blinked white. Then a photo appeared. Not a slide. Not a chart. A photo. Melissa, sitting on someone's lap. She looked completely at ease. Legs tucked under her, head leaning toward the guy, her arm wrapped casually over his shoulder like they did this all the time. Her hand was underneath his shirt. His shirt, not mine. Her fingers just barely disappearing under the fabric like muscle memory. She was smiling, not for the camera, but for him. He wasn't looking at her, not directly, but his body language said everything. He was settled, comfortable. Her hand didn't surprise him. That image only stayed up for about 3 seconds. But that's all it took. Melissa's reaction was fast. Too fast. She yanked the USB from the laptop like it burned her. The screen blinked off. She spun back around. Okay, whoa. That was not supposed to be there, she said with a short laugh. That was from a stupid team-building retreat. Like a year ago, I think. Nate dared me, some ridiculous bonding game. You know how it is with those people. I didn't answer. She kept going, her voice a little too bright. It was a joke. Like one of those dumb icebreaker things where they have you do stuff that's supposed to break walls down or whatever. I barely even remember it, honestly. God, that's embarrassing. She unplugged the laptop altogether and started gathering her things without meeting my eyes. You know I'd never do anything like that, she added quickly. Obviously. You know me. Then she left the room. Just like that. I sat there, still holding my beer. Still staring at the now blank wall like the photo might reappear if I waited long enough. Like maybe I'd misread it. Maybe it was a weird angle. Maybe it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It never is. The thing that stuck with me wasn't just the pose. Or her hand. Or the guy, whoever the hell he was. It was her face. That softness in her expression. That easy int asterisk Macy. That familiarity that doesn't come from a dare or a joke. And then, afterward, the way she brushed it off. Not shocked. Not scared. Not even really apologetic. Just dismissive. Like I was the one who'd be overreacting if I made it a thing. That hurt more than the image. Because I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even ask questions. But something inside me quietly shifted. Not a collapse, not yet. More like a fracture. I wasn't angry in that moment. That would have been easier. Anger gives you direction. Anger has a script. This was something colder. A stillness. A creeping realization that I might have been looking at the end of something and just hadn't realized it yet. I replayed the moment over and over. The timing of the pull-out. The speed of her reaction. The way she reached for a ready-made explanation, complete with names and context and just enough detail to sound plausible. But here's the thing. Melissa never plugged in that USB without previewing the file first. She was meticulous, borderline obsessive, when it came to presentations. There's no way she didn't know that photo was on there. None. And if she had known, why was it there at all? That night, she went to bed early. Said she had a headache. I stayed on the couch. Just sat there in the dim glow of the TV, volume down low, watching a cooking show I couldn't follow. My eyes weren't on the screen. They were still seeing that image, still parsing the details like a detective with a blurry photo pinned to a corkboard. I couldn't even tell you what the guy looked like. His face was turned slightly away, out of focus. All I could make out was that he had short brown hair, strong build, probably younger than me. The kind of guy who wears gym shorts as casual wear. Confident posture. The kind of confidence that comes from thinking you're untouchable. But it wasn't about him. It was about her. About the fact that she looked like a different person in that photo. Person I wasn't sure I knew anymore. That realization hit harder than I expected. It wasn't the betrayal I felt first. It was the loss. Because if she could look like that, with someone else, what did that say about everything we'd built? And if she could lie so smoothly, so easily, what else had she lied about? The image began to unravel the past in reverse. Like tugging on a loose thread and watching a whole sweater fall apart. Suddenly, old memories flickered with new meaning. Her late-night texts. The perfume I didn't recognize. The weekends she spent working late, but came back with bar wristbands. All of it fell into a new timeline, one where I wasn't the only main character in her story. But I said nothing. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't accuse. I didn't even bring it up again the next morning. When she kissed me goodbye on her way to work, I kissed her back. But something inside me had changed. I started seeing things more clearly, not just her, but us. The distance that had crept in over the last year. The way conversations had become brief, logistical. The way her phone was always face down. The shift in her tone when I asked simple questions. All the things I had ignored out of love or habit or fear. That photo was a mirror. And what it showed me wasn't just what she was doing. It was who I had become. Passive. Overtrusting. Too willing to believe in a version of her that might have stopped existing a long time ago. That night broke something in me, but not the way I expected. Not with shouting. Not with confrontation. Just with clarity. Because now, for the first time, I was really paying attention. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't over. Not by a long sh*t. I didn't confront her. At least, not in the way people expect. No explosive fight. No dramatic "who is he?" moment. I didn't flip a table or threaten divorce or ask for names. I didn't even mention the photo again. And that, honestly, scared me more than anything else, that I didn't feel compelled to demand an explanation. Instead, I started watching. The shift in me was subtle, even to myself. I went from trusting to observing. I wasn't hunting for lies. I was just noticing the things I had been trained, over time, to ignore. The next few days were quiet. Normal, even. Melissa acted like nothing had happened. She was busy with prep for her presentation. Came home late once or twice. Said her boss had looped in a client last minute. I nodded. Smiled. Said, of course, like I always did. But this time I logged the details. Tuesday night. She came home in different clothes than she left in. Said she spilled coffee. Her car smelled like men's cologne. Not mine, not hers. Subtle but sharp. Wednesday. She called me from the car to say she'd be home late. The call dropped 3 times, which never happened unless she was in a certain area on the outskirts of town. The kind of place with dead zones and cheap Wi-Fi, not corporate buildings. Thursday. She laughed at a text and wouldn't tell me what it was. Just smiled and said, "You wouldn't get it. It's work stuff." Her phone screen was angled away from me, like it always seemed to be now. By Friday, I had started taking notes. I created a private journal on my old phone, the one I'd never gotten around to trading in. Each entry was dated, time-stamped, categorized. I wasn't obsessing. I wasn't spiraling. I was documenting, because the truth, I realized, is slippery. When you're being gaslit or just subtly dismissed long enough, you start to doubt your own memory. But notes? Notes don't lie. Notes don't change the way someone's story does. That weekend, she mentioned someone new. Nate, she said over dinner. He's hilarious. I swear, half our team is useless without him. Nate. That was the name she threw out during her excuse about the photo. I made a neutral face, even as something flared up in my chest. I'd never heard of Nate before that week. Not in the 2 years she'd worked at that firm. Not in all the random stories she'd told about coworkers and drama and office gossip. Suddenly now Nate was a staple? Where's he from? I asked casually. She blinked like the question surprised her. I don't know. Houston, I think? That hesitation, it was less than a second. But when you're paying attention, those little gaps scream. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I synced her work email to the shared tablet. She'd set it up once to review documents from home, forgotten she'd ever logged in. I never touched it before, but now I needed facts. Not suspicions, not vibes, just facts. There wasn't much at first. Mostly boring memos, project files, reminders. But buried in a folder labeled Client Assets, I found something weird. A JPG file named Team Retreat SRMG0047. I opened it. A group photo from a company lakehouse trip about 8 months back. Everyone smiling, sunburnt, red cups in hand. But there, off to the side, was Nate, the same guy from the couch photo. I didn't recognize him at first, but when I zoomed in, there was no doubt. Same jawline, same slightly too white teeth, same smug posture. Melissa was next to him, her shoulder brushing his. He was leaning in to say something. She was laughing. Her eyes weren't on the camera. That same look. I saved the file, archived it to cloud storage. I created a folder titled, For Later. That night, Melissa mentioned him again, this time while scrolling Instagram. Nate sends me the dumbest reels, she said, grinning at her phone. I didn't ask to see. She didn't offer. We just sat there, inches apart on the couch, living in completely different timelines. That was the moment I realized she wasn't afraid. She wasn't trying to hide Nate. Not completely. She'd already done the mental math and decided I wouldn't connect the dots. Or if I did, she'd find a way to explain it all away. And to be honest, she wasn't wrong. Because up until that point, I hadn't done anything. I'd sat there and watched the cracks spread across our marriage like spiderwebs on glass. I'd seen the signs. I'd ignored the gut feelings. I'd let her tell me what was real. But that was over now. On Sunday, while she was out getting groceries, I installed a discreet GPS tracker on her car. I'd watched enough YouTube tutorials to get it right. One of those tiny magnetic ones you stick near the wheel well. Is synced to an app on my phone. Real-time updates. Geofencing. All of it. Then I synced our shared tablet to our cloud notifications, calendar, social media, email. She'd set all that up for convenience once. Never bothered to remove my permissions. I was quiet about it. Careful. Not because I felt guilty, but because I wanted the truth to speak without interference. Because here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not just the act that breaks you. It's the rewriting, the denial, the way they make you feel like you're crazy for even asking questions. A few nights later, we were watching TV. Some crime show about double lives, I think. Melissa leaned over during a commercial and said, "You're not one of those jealous types, right?" I glanced at her, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I mean, I know you trust me. You're not, like, controlling." The way she said it, it wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. Like she needed to remind me of my place. Like she was making sure I'd stay compliant. That's when I realized something else. She didn't think I had the power to stop her. Not just the affair, if that's what it was, but the whole story she was constructing. The one where she's a hard-working woman with a flaky husband, doing what she needs to survive in a world that doesn't appreciate her enough. That narrative only works if I stay silent. But I was already building something else. Something patient, strategic, unemotional. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was looking for leverage. That night, her car pinged on the tracker. An unfamiliar address 20 minutes outside town. Not a store. Not her office. Just a residential street near the edge of some new development. She came home late. Said traffic was bad. No groceries in hand. Her hair was wet. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, nodded, and kissed her on the cheek. And later, after she was asleep, I typed out another entry in the log. Date, Tuesday. Time, 7:54 p.m. to 10:13 p.m. Location, unfamiliar address. No groceries. New scent, unfamiliar cologne. Musk, maybe citrus. Hair damp upon return. Mood, calm, slightly distant. I looked at the tablet. No calendar entries. No meeting reminders. No calls made. Just a quiet block of time. Just a space where the truth used to be. The moment came on a Thursday. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just a ping on my phone while I was in the garage, halfway through replacing a brake light. Your vehicle has arrived at 247 Oak Terrace Road. I wiped my hands on a rag and checked the map. It was that same street again, the one on the edge of town, past the newer subdivisions. I zoomed in. Same two-story house, beige siding, well-kept lawn. No cars in the driveway except hers. I opened the camera feed. The tracker came with a motion-activated dash cam. I hadn't even expected much from it, just wanted to monitor the drive. But there she was, clear as day, walking around to the passenger side, takeout bag in hand. Thai food. I recognized the logo. Then he came out, barefoot, athletic shorts, t-shirt slung over one shoulder like he'd just pulled it off. It was him, Nate. He walked up to her like it was routine. Like this wasn't a meeting, they were just picking up where they left off. His hand touched her waist. Lightly. Possessive. Not obscene, just confident. Familiar. She smiled. The same smile I used to get when I surprised her with flowers. Relaxed. Happy. Like nothing else mattered. And then they were gone. The front door closed. The feed went still. I watched the playback 3 times. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because I needed to know how it felt to see your wife walk willingly into another man's home, with dinner in her hand and softness on her face. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there in the garage, grease on my fingers, while something ancient and quiet settled into my chest. A calm so sharp it felt surgical. This wasn't a guess anymore. This was confirmation. I checked the footage's timestamp and made a note. 6:32 p.m. At 8:07 p.m., her car moved again. At 8:37 p.m., she walked through our front door wearing a different blouse. Hair pulled into a fresh bun. No takeout in hand. She looked up and smiled like nothing had happened. "Hey babe," she said. "You eat yet?" "No, not hungry," I replied. She kissed me on the cheek. I logged every second of it later that night. Wrote it all down with the kind of detachment you use when filing an insurance claim. Facts, times, details. No room for interpretation. And then I backed everything up. First to a local hard drive, then to a private cloud folder. I created a decoy folder labeled Taxes 2022 and nested the files inside. I didn't trust keeping all of it in one place. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was evidence. And the more I looked at it, the more something inside me began to shift. Not just away from her, but away from the man I had been. Because that man, the one who looked the other way, who excused things, who loved her blindly, he was gone. Or maybe not gone, but standing in the rearview mirror, growing smaller each time I clicked Save As. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a quiet archivist. I didn't follow her. I didn't spy on her in person. That's the trick. You don't interfere with a story while it's still writing itself. You let it breathe. I set up rules on the tablet to alert me when she received messages from certain contacts. Nate wasn't in her saved numbers. But the IP metadata on some incoming emails led to a personal Gmail I eventually traced to him through LinkedIn. I didn't tell her I'd found it. Instead, I built a folder called MELPRIV. Inside it, *TS, calendar overlaps, matching locations. A full constellation of betrayal, documented 1 pixel at a time. It became routine. She'd say she was working late. I'd check the logs. One night, she claimed her boss had taken the team out to celebrate a new client. Meanwhile, the tracker had her parked outside a gym for 40 minutes. Then Nate's house for 2 hours. She returned with a smoothie and a gym towel, and a fresh mark just under her collarbone that she never explained. I added it to the file. I never asked her about any of it, because asking implies you expect honesty. I didn't, not anymore. The hardest part wasn't the lies. It was realizing how easy they were for her, like flipping a switch. One night, while she showered, I found a note she'd written in her planner. Saturday 2 p.m. Bring wine. No last name. No context. Just a scribble among grocery lists and reminders. I took a picture. Then I tore it out. She asked about it later, casually. Did you see that wine reminder in my planner? Nope, I said. She shrugged. Must have been a glitch. I swear it was there. I nodded. Even her gaslighting had gotten lazy. The camera caught them again the following weekend. Different shirt. Same house. A longer stay. She emerged an hour and 45 minutes later wearing sunglasses. Her hair still wet, tossing an empty wine bottle into the recycling bin by the side of the house like she lived there. This time, she texted me before heading home. Sorry, traffic's insane. Be back soon. Want anything from Sonic? Sonic. I watched her pull into a Sonic 5 minutes later. She stayed in the drive-thru for 3 minutes. She came home with 2 drinks, only one of which made it to the kitchen. The other stayed in her car cup holder until the next morning. She looked me in the eye and asked about my day. Kissed me again. Called me babe. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because she really thought I didn't know. She really believed her story was airtight, that I was still asleep. Still clinging to some fantasy version of her. Still believing that a woman who loved me would look like that for another man and then come home and pour me sweet tea. That was the moment I stopped asking myself if I'd ever forgive her. I wouldn't. Not because I couldn't, but because she hadn't even tried to be forgiven. That takes remorse. This was arrogance. This was someone who thought I didn't matter enough to cover her tracks. That hurt more than anything else. So I started preparing. Quietly, carefully. I moved a few business documents out of our shared drive and into a locked folder. Nothing suspicious, just cleanup, in case of a sync issue. I told her. She barely listened. I called a lawyer. Just an initial consult. Do you have proof? She asked. I laughed. Do I have proof? I could make a documentary. She nodded. We talked through options. I didn't commit to anything. But I left that office with a manila folder that made me feel 10 pounds lighter. I wasn't helpless. I was just waiting. Melissa's patterns started repeating. Same days, same times, same stories. Sometimes she'd try to switch it up. Call Nate my client in passing. Or say she was swinging by Sarah's, when the tracker had her parked outside Nate's place again. At one point, she claimed she was running a focus group from his address. Big client. Home-based. It's a startup thing. Right? With wine. At night. For 2 hours. I wrote it down anyway. The notes started reading like a script. At 6:45 p.m. Going to pick up Chipotle. Be back soon. At 7:02 p.m. Car arrives at Oak Terrace. At 8:50 p.m. Car departs. Trash bag in hand. At 9:12 p.m. Arrives home. No Chipotle. Excuse. They messed up the order. I left. Too tired to go back. I nodded. I said, that's *CKs. She said, I know, right? We watched a movie that night. She leaned into me halfway through and fell asleep. Or pretended to. I watched the credits roll and thought, she really doesn't see it. She thinks I'm still inside this lie with her. Still playing the role of the clueless husband. And that's when I knew the most dangerous thing I could do was nothing at all. I never considered myself a vengeful person. Honestly, I still don't. But something changes when you realize the person you trusted most has rewritten your entire relationship behind your back. And worse, did it with the full confidence that you'd never find out. There's a special kind of arrogance in that. Melissa didn't just betray me. She underestimated me. That was her real mistake. Once I accepted the truth, fully without hoping for some redemptive twist, I started planning. Not out of bitterness. Not even out of anger. Just logic. If she had quietly checked out of the marriage, then I was under no obligation to keep holding up my side of it. I wasn't going to burn the house down. I was going to dismantle it, brick by brick. First came the legal groundwork. I met with 2 more attorneys, both specialists in family law, both highly recommended. I didn't give them everything right away, just the surface details. Long-term marriage, suspected infidelity, shared assets, one joint business account, no children. I wanted to hear how they'd approach it without tipping my full hand. The third attorney, a woman named Burke, was the one I stuck with. She didn't flinch when I showed her the evidence. Didn't look at me with pity. She nodded like she'd seen worse, which she probably had. "You're in a very strong position," she said after reviewing the footage, **TS, and GPS logs. "If you stay calm, stay quiet, and keep documenting, this can work out very cleanly for you." I liked that word, cleanly. I gave her a separate folder, labeled with neutral dates, that excluded any content that might look invasive. Nothing from inside Melissa's devices, just public records, observable data, GPS tracking legally registered to a vehicle I co-owned, photos taken from public property, metadata, no hearsay, just a mountain of quiet, clinical truth. Next came the finances. Melissa and I had launched a small side business 2 years back. Nothing massive, just an LLC for freelance design and consulting projects, but it generated decent revenue and was tied to both our names. She hadn't touched the back end in months, and I was the one who handled the invoicing, the billing, the taxes, so I started separating. I filed a formal amendment removing her access from the company's primary checking account. I transferred my business email off the shared domain. I backed up every invoice, every communication, every document onto a private drive. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of administrative churn she never paid attention to. I sent her a note, cleaning up back-end stuff, just a heads up, and she replied with a thumbs-up emoji. No questions asked. She never saw it coming. Once that foundation was set, I took it one step further. I hired a private investigator. Not because I didn't believe my own eyes, but because I needed third-party documentation. Something unbiased. Something professional. If she ever tried to flip the story, I didn't want to rely on digital breadcrumbs alone. The guy's name was Davis. Retired cop, now licensed PI. No nonsense. He asked direct questions, took notes, and promised results. "I won't tail her every day," he said. "But I'll do 3 drops, key locations, different days. If there's a pattern, we'll find it." And we did. The first set of photos came in 4 days later. Melissa's car parked outside Nate's place at 6:15 p.m. She rang the doorbell, wine in one hand, tote bag in the other. He answered shirtless. That detail made Davis raise an eyebrow. "I don't usually see that unless they're already comfortable," he noted. She stayed inside for 87 minutes. Left wearing the same dress, but her hair was wet again. Second drop. Same place, new car. She used a rideshare this time, thinking it would erase the pattern. She hadn't counted on me tracking her location through the sync tablet, which still pinged her Gmail activity. Davis got a clear photo of her entering the property. That time, she brought Chinese takeout and a wrapped gift. They hugged at the door like they hadn't seen each other in weeks. Though I knew they'd met 2 nights prior. He kissed her forehead. She didn't flinch. She didn't even check to see if anyone was watching. And that's when it hit me. She thought she was invincible. She thought I was too weak or too passive to fight back. That assumption became the cornerstone of my strategy. Because the best time to collapse a lie is when the liar believes the world still believes them. I started sowing controlled seeds of doubt, small, curated signals to test how much she noticed. I left my laptop open one night. A file titled Client Separation Agreement pulled up. She glanced at it, blinked, then said nothing. I left a business card from Burke on the counter one morning. When I returned, it was gone. But she never asked about it. She was watching, just not closely enough. She was too busy managing her fantasy. So I escalated. I had a gift delivered to her office. Lingerie, wrapped in black tissue, ribboned with a card that said, "You looked amazing last night. Can't stop thinking about you." And the point wasn't to humiliate her. It was to observe. I didn't include a return address. Didn't hack anything. Just used publicly available info and an anonymous courier. I waited 3 days. On the 4th, I got what I wanted. A photo forwarded by someone I barely knew. A girl Melissa worked with once, who followed me on Instagram but never liked a single post. Melissa, standing in her office, laughing, holding the box up like a trophy. The caption: "The queen of mixed signals strikes again, face with tears of joy." It wasn't meant for me, but it reached me anyway. And it confirmed what I already suspected. She didn't care if people knew. Or worse, she wanted them to. Nate wasn't a secret she was protecting. He was a prize. A fantasy she was trying to manifest out loud while keeping me as the clean fallback. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her cover story. And I'd had enough. The final move in my quiet campaign came the day she was invited to speak at a regional business ethics forum. Oh, the irony. She was set to give a talk on building trust through transparent leadership. It was one of those panels where small business owners and corporate consultants pat each other on the back while swapping jargon. I registered for the event under a pseudonym. No one looked twice. I knew the schedule. I knew where her slides were stored. Months ago, she'd saved her presentation folder to our shared cloud so I could review the template. She forgot to remove access, so I waited. The day before the conference, I uploaded a replacement file. Same title, same cover slide, but buried midway through, I added 2 images and 1 slide of text. I didn't label anything, didn't include accusations or names, just the visual proof. Melissa and Nate on that couch, time-stamped and unambiguous, and then a full-screen **T of one of their private messages. The one where she'd written, "It's almost fun watching him try to act like a real husband, like he still thinks he has a chance." No caption, no context, just the truth. I made sure it was synced and saved. Then I cleared my tracks. I didn't plan to attend. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about exposure. Let her try to explain that in front of an audience. Let her feel the moment rupture like I had. Sitting in our living room watching her hand slide under another man's shirt. Let her realize, in front of colleagues and peers, that she'd underestimated me one final time. Because when she stood at that podium, the story she thought she controlled was going to slip right out from under her. And there'd be no rewrites, no explanations, no exit strategy, just silence and truth, delivered with the same calm precision she once used to lie straight to my face. The morning of the conference, Melissa was buzzing. She'd been practicing that keynote in the mirror all week, rehearsing every transition and timing her pacing down to the second. She even bought a new outfit for the occasion. Sleek black slacks, pale blue silk blouse, heels I hadn't seen before. She looked good, professional, polished. "I might actually be nervous," she said, sipping her coffee at the kitchen island. "Stupid, right?" I smiled. "Not stupid. You worked hard." She leaned over and kissed me lightly. "Thanks, babe." The audacity of that moment would have crushed me a month ago. Now it barely registered. As she walked out the door with her laptop bag slung over her shoulder, I watched from the window. Not out of longing, just timing. She pulled away at 7:48 a.m. Same as planned. She didn't know I'd already removed the backup of her real presentation from the cloud drive. She didn't know that the USB she would use on-site, her reliable offline failsafe, was swapped with an identical one I'd loaded with my revised version, tucked discreetly into the lining of her work tote days ago. She also didn't know that her keynote had been moved to the largest auditorium in the venue. I had submitted a recommendation email to the organizers weeks prior, from a burner address, posing as a senior partner at a fake consultancy Melissa had supposedly worked with. I included glowing praise, saying she had extraordinary insight into ethical frameworks and deserved a spotlight session. They upgraded her slot. Sometimes all it takes is a confident signature and a few LinkedIn buzzwords. By 9:15 a.m., she was standing center stage under a blue spotlight, with a microphone clipped to her blouse and a room of business professionals, brand reps, and HR managers watching her every move. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I was sitting in my car, parked near a lake on the other side of town, watching the live stream on my phone. Her firm had hyped her up online and encouraged staff to tune in virtually. They didn't know they were about to witness a controlled detonation. The first few slides went smoothly. A graph, a quote, some branding buzz. She spoke confidently, hands steady, smile sharp. Transparency is more than just openness, she said, her voice echoing across the auditorium. It's accountability. It's owning the hard truths. Slide click. Another quote. Another nod from the crowd. Then came slide 9. Her rhythm faltered. The screen behind her didn't show the next bullet point. Instead, it showed a photo. Melissa on a couch. Nate underneath her. Her hand halfway under his shirt. Time-stamped. GPS tagged. No ambiguity. You could hear the intake of breath across the room. Her body stiffened. She turned slowly to look at the screen, blinking like she couldn't quite process what she was seeing. Then slide 10 appeared. A chat log. From her phone. Clear as day. Melissa. It's kind of hilarious how clueless he still is. I could sleep with Nate on the kitchen table and he'd probably apologize for being in the way. Silence. Not polite confusion. Not tech malfunction silence. Real silence, the kind that crushes the oxygen out of a room. She turned back to the audience, her face drained of color. Someone in the crowd stood up. Another pulled out their phone. A few seconds passed, and then an organizer walked briskly onto the stage, leaned in to whisper something, and guided her off with a hand at her back. The stream cut to a holding screen. We're experiencing technical difficulties. I watched the buffering icon spin. Melissa never came back on. I didn't move, didn't cheer, didn't cry. I just sat there in the driver's seat, staring at the lake, letting the silence of it all sink in. My phone buzzed. Texts from people I hadn't heard from in months. A few emojis. One reads simply, "Bro, what did you do?" I didn't answer. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. Later that day, Melissa came home early. I was in the backyard, trimming hedges, pretending not to care. She didn't say a word at first. Just stood at the edge of the deck, hands trembling, hair no longer perfectly pinned. Her mascara had smudged, and her blouse was stained with something. Maybe coffee. Her face was a mess of disbelief and fury. "You," she whispered. I didn't look up. "I what?" "You ruined me."